Lots to cover this evening, but first, some news. The Vatican announced on Wednesday Father Massimo Palombella has left his position as director of the Sistine Chapel Choir. The end of Palombella's 9-year tenure comes after news of a financial scandal involving the choir, which broke in July of 2018. Now, the Pope had authorized an investigation last September into the economic administrative aspects of the choir. That investigation continues. Allegations of money laundering, aggravated fraud against the Vatican city-state, and embezzlement have all been reported. They accuse the choir manager as well as the director. Now, according to reports, both of them transferred some concert proceeds to an Italian bank account and used the money for personal expenses. We'll keep you posted on that story. And the Vatican has announced that Pope Francis will declare Blessed John Henry Newman, the 19th century British cardinal, a saint on October 13th. He was born in London in 1801, and John Henry Newman was ordained an Anglican priest in 1825. He later founded the Oxford movement, which emphasized the Catholic roots of Anglicanism. After a series of clashes with Anglican bishops, it made him a virtual outcast from the Church of England. He joined the Catholic Church at the age of 44. He was ordained a Catholic priest in 1846. Pope Leo XIII made him a cardinal in 1879. The theologian and poet died in 1890, and his sainthood cause was opened in 58. Pope Benedict XVI beatified him 9 years ago. Now, speaking of causes for canonization, as regular viewers of this program know, we have been covering the ongoing saga of the cause of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen for years. In full disclosure, I was a member of the original foundation that moved his cause for canonization nearly 20 years ago. Now, the Archdiocese of New York finally released the late televangelist's remains to his home diocese of Peoria, allowing his cause for sainthood to continue, and the Pope on Friday affirmed the first miracle in that cause. Joining me now after that long battle to secure Sheen's remains is the Bishop of Peoria, Illinois, Daniel Jenky. He joins us from his home diocese. Your Excellency, thank you for being here.
Very glad to be here.
Now, Bishop Jenky, you opened Sheen's cause for canonization in 2002. What does it mean to you today that his remains are back in your diocese, back home, and that we'll soon all see him beatified?
It means a great blessing for not only for my diocese, but for the Universal Church. When the Sheen group came to see me, I was enthusiastic from the moment they presented the possibility. And I brought it to our presbyteral council, and all of the priests were enthusiastic. So I've been a part of this now. I'm in my 18th year as bishop, and I think my meeting with the group was about 6 weeks after I was installed as Bishop of Peoria. So now, it's been a personal journey, but...
Bishop Jenky, explain to me and to the audience the background of why you and Peoria moved Sheen's cause and not New York. I remember this vividly because I was part of that group that initially went to Cardinal Egan in New York about the cause. And what happened there? Just explain it to people.
As you probably know, it was Cardinal Spellman who really picked Fulton Sheen out in many ways, both for his radio program before World War II and his TV show, the Emmy-winning Life is Worth Living. But when he and the Cardinal had a falling out over money, he became persona non grata. Yeah. And the New York Archdiocese made it crystal clear they wanted nothing to do with the cause. And so did the Diocese of Rochester, and so did some others. Yeah. The Diocese of Peoria, on the other hand, was enthusiastic from the first moment.
Yeah. Well, Cardinal Egan at the time, he said, I remember him telling some of the leaders of the foundation, look, we already have Pierre Toussaint and Dorothy Day. Those causes are going to move much quicker than Fulton Sheen. That'll be decades. So you can take that on to Peoria if you want. And then if they can get the ball rolling, we're happy to give the body to Peoria at a later date. There's a letter to that effect, which was written. Now, that never happened. In 2010, you paused this cause of canonization for Sheen, or beatification, due to the disagreement with New York. Then in 2014, you suspended Sheen's cause on the ground that the Holy See expected the remains, Sheen's remains, to be in the Diocese of Peoria. New York fought that. Why were they so resistant to allowing the movement of the remains, even though Cardinal Egan had previously agreed to that transfer?
I really can't answer that question. I'm not being coy. I really don't know the answer. I do know His Eminence, Cardinal Dolan, has great personal devotion to Fulton Sheen.
He does.
I really don't know after the fact why that happened. I still don't. And I knew Cardinal Dolan when we were both happy priests. So I don't know. I'm more interested, to be honest, in the future that we celebrate this moment for the church, that Fulton Sheen's enormous gifts, I think one of the greatest evangelizers from America, he and Billy Graham, I don't think there's anyone like them.
Well, there's a third, Mother Angelica.
Always preaching the gospel.
I have to slip Mother Angelica in, but those are the three. They're the three titans of evangelization in the United States, certainly over the media.
My idea of an open-minded person is someone I agree with, and I agree with you. So this is a moment of grace, and we've never needed good examples of relentlessly, in season and out of season, announcing the good news than we need today. And Fulton Sheen was just out, along with Mother Angelica and along with Billy Graham, are outstanding examples of that.
Bishop Jenky, in 2016, Joan Cunningham, Sheen's niece, petitioned the Supreme Court of New York to allow the transfer of the body. Now, I am putting up on the screen here, we've obtained some exclusive images of that transfer out of the crypt of St. Patrick's Cathedral and to your diocese there in St. Mary's in Peoria. Were you surprised about the refusal to transfer the body? I don't want to take you back, but there was a lot of confusion among the laity about why the canonization was being stalled, because the body had to be moved to Peoria, which was the place that had advanced the cause.
You're asking the wrong person to give this answer. And I am more interested in the future than I am in the past. I cannot answer for other people. I do know and believe that His Eminence has great love and devotion for Fulton Sheen. But I'd also would assert it was the Diocese of Peoria that took on the cause. People, we did not, you'll read, we spent $1 million, we raised $1 million, but the diocesan funds were about 30 grand. And the historic case done by our Monsignor Sosman was, I've heard in Rome, was one of the most brilliant they've ever seen. The clergy of this diocese, the religious and faithful, have been behind it to an amazing degree. And I think it is only appropriate that his remains be venerated in the cathedral where he was ordained, and that the cause go forward. That's the most important thing. We need Fulton Sheen, who I devoutly think is in the communion of saints, intercedes for the church, prays with us and for us. We need his example as much as we've ever needed it. On June 27th, the remains of Archbishop Sheen, as you mentioned, were transferred to Peoria. Joan Cunningham, his niece, was there along with her son Paul. Has the body been inspected yet, Your Excellency? This is part of the process. That awaits the official decree that the beatification will take place and the date upon which it may take place. After that, we have begun preliminary arrangements for some doctors and nurses to open the coffin and to inspect the remains, and that is when relics would be taken. So that's the next part of this process. That's right. Sometime before the beatification. Now, in 2010, you met Bonnie and Travis Angstrom. They are going to be on the program, or Bonnie is, in just a moment. Her stillborn son survived after 61 minutes of not breathing, and they attributed his survival to the intercession of Archbishop Sheen. What did you think when you first heard this story? Well, if you want to have a miracle to promote a beatification, this was the home run. This was knocking the baseball out of the park. 61 minutes with no sign of life, no breathing, no heartbeat. Even if by some, that anyone would survive that would be miraculous. But that he's a rather outgoing little boy right now, shows no signs of any difficulty, is simply astounding. At the time, when the diocese did the investigation, we were happy to say there were, among the nurses and doctors, there were some people who are not Catholic and not believers, and their testimony was extremely important. There were many other people in the emergency room who were praying very explicitly that Fulton Sheen would pray with them and for them. But there were people there who didn't have a stake in this, and their testimony was astounding. Monsignor Gray, who I believe you've met, he did that part of the investigation. And he said their testimony was awesome.
No, I've read some of that and accounts of it. It is extraordinary. And the Congregation for the Cause of Saints promulgated the decree approving Sheen's miracle, and Pope Francis approved it last week. Now, there seems to be a commitment in Rome to proceed quickly here, Bishop. What do you consider the core of Sheen's charism as an intercessor? If you could define what he would be the patron of, what would that be?
I think he would be the patron of evangelization. Way back when when Paul VI was Pope, in one of his encyclicals, he taught us that the church exists to evangelize. It precedes all the other mysteries and truths. And Sheen, I understand, even as he was dying in the emergency room, he was evangelizing someone in one of those partitions next to him, as sick as he was. He would preach the gospel to cab drivers. He had a great prison ministry with the rich and the famous and with the poorest of the poor. He did it all over the world. He was a true servant of Christ. Go, therefore, preach to all nations. And Fulton Sheen did that. And he wasn't ashamed of the gospel. And he was so deeply devoted to the Holy Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah, he was also
in season and out of season.
He was such an amazing communicator, a man who could tell stories with a particular end and spin yarns. His great Irish heritage, bled through his work. He used all of that to evangelize, and that dramatic actor's bearing that he had, on television for so many years. I see him, Bishop, as almost an intercessor and perhaps an emblem of the reform of the church and the priesthood during a very dark period. And perhaps that's what he could represent, if not be the patron of, at this moment.
I think that's a wonderful idea. As you well know, the overwhelming majority of our priests are selfless, holy, generous, zealous human beings. And they need an example like him just for their own encouragement. He was a born preacher. He used his extraordinary brilliance, but he had the gift of bringing it down to ordinary people's level. He'd often in his preaching begin with 2 or 3 self-depreciatory notes about himself, something to make people kind of smile at him, and then without noticing it, then he'd announce the good news. And he was one of the most, he had one of the most advanced degrees offered in the world from Louvain. He was brilliant. What did he write? Almost close to 100 books.
He did.
I've read, I can't say I've read all of them, but I've read a lot of them. And I've listened, as I drive across the 26 counties of the Holy Church of Peoria, I've listened to a lot of his preaching and teaching in the car.
Yeah, no, he's extraordinary. And for those of you who have not heard Sheen, you really should. I mean, to hear him and hear those not only his preaching but the television shows, they really are extraordinary. And this year marks the 100th anniversary of Archbishop Sheen's priestly ordination. Bishop, when do you expect to see Sheen beatified, given the speed with which the Vatican is moving this cause?
We're praying that it will take place soon. There's a date we have in mind. Believe me, it's the Bishop of Rome who decides these things, not the Bishop of Peoria. But we're praying that it would be in September. And there's a date there. It's very significant, the day he was ordained. But I cannot speak for the Holy Father.
Okay, well, we'll all pray for that date. That's my birthday, September 20th. So I'm going to pray for that day, and we'll celebrate a number of things.
If it happens on that day, I'll announce That's why it happened.
Oh, I don't think so. That's in spite of that birthday it happened. Thank you so much, Bishop Jenky. We will stay in touch with you in the days ahead. And thank you for your championing of this cause through some very difficult times. I know those who have supported this cause are so thankful to you. So thank you.
God bless you, and I'm so thankful to so many others, including EWTN.
Thank you, Bishop. My next guest is the recipient of the miracle that secured Archbishop Sheen's beatification. We spoke of her a moment ago. Her infant son was stillborn but survived due to what she believes was the intercession of the late Archbishop. Joining me now to share her family's story is Bonnie Angstrom. Bonnie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. How did you first come across Archbishop Sheen? Where did you encounter him or hear of him?
You know, in one way, I had always known who Fulton Sheen was because I'm from the Diocese of Peoria, as was he. And so I just had always heard his name. He was a local boy. But I really got to know him when I was pregnant with my third child. And I found him on YouTube. And I just started watching episodes of his old television show and listening to his preaching.
Wow. And what drew you to him? Why were you think, drawn to pray for him when you were pregnant with that third child?
Well, my husband Travis and I, we both just felt that he was so funny, so smart, so warm. And I think, again, we just connected with him as a Midwestern local boy. So we knew that his cause was open for canonization, and we thought, wow, this would be amazing if our son was named after this man who's going to be a saint, this man who's from our area. And so we just started asking for his intercession even during that pregnancy and really getting to know him and befriend him.
Was it the EWTN YouTube episodes of Life is Worth Living?
Yes, that's what we watched.
Wow.
It was great. We still watch them as a family.
Wow. Your son, James Fulton, was stillborn. He was not breathing, as I discussed earlier with the bishop, when he was born. You wrote a book about this called 61 Minutes to a Miracle. Take us back to that day. What was going on in your mind at that moment, and how did you ask Sheen to intercede then?
You know, in those moments when James was placed in my arms and he was blue and not breathing and his arms and his legs dangled, my midwife immediately started CPR and my husband did an emergency baptism. And I think I started going into a state of shock. But I remember in my head saying, Fulton Sheen, Fulton Sheen, Fulton Sheen. And I think it was because, you know, during my pregnancy, I had built this habit of calling on him for prayers. And so in that moment, it was like referring to your friend saying, I don't know what to do, but please fill this gap for me. And so that's what we did.
Unbelievable. And then, of course, he began breathing, his heartbeat returned to normal, but it was 61 minutes where nothing happened. I mean, he was not responding.
Right. Right. First, we were at home, and then in the ambulance and in the emergency room, James had no pulse at all on the heart monitor. Wow. And so, you know, after 61 minutes, the doctors were ready to declare time of death. And as soon as they took their hands off, his heart just started beating again. I mean, it really was amazing. And of course, they expected massive organ failure to follow. Right. They believed that James would not make it because you can't go 61 minutes without a pulse and be okay.
Well, I read that the doctors told you...
we just kept praying.
I read that the doctors told you he wouldn't develop properly. He would likely be blind. He would not be able to walk or talk or feed himself. He's now 8 years old. How's he doing?
He's great. He's a normal 8-year-old boy. He, you know, rides his bike. He goes swimming at the pool this summer. He loves Star Wars and hot dogs. I mean, he's a normal 8-year-old kid.
I love it. In September of 2011, the Diocese of Peoria initiated an investigation into the events of James' recovery, your son's recovery. They heard testimony from family members, first responders, doctors, nurses, and others present at his birth. Each testified that there was no medical explanation for his recovery. Did you ever question that this miracle was because of the intercession of Archbishop Sheen?
No. From the very beginning, we knew in our heart that Jesus Christ had performed a miracle, and he had done so through the intercession of Fulton Sheen. it was always a powerful, beautiful thing for us, and we've always known that Fulton Sheen was by our side.
Wow. This miracle was approved by the Pope just last week on July 5th for the beatification of Archbishop Sheen. What did you think when you heard that news, Bonnie?
My mind was blown, as they say. It was crazy. And I even said to James, Pope Francis knows who you are. It's a very amazing, surreal thing. It's super exciting, but it also kind of makes us feel really small, We want all of the emphasis to be on God who performed this miracle. We know it's for his honor and glory, and we are so happy that Fulton Sheen is being brought to the attention of more and more people because he will lead them closer to Christ, and that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of misunderstanding. People read this and they think, oh, Sheen performed the miracle. No, the church teaches Sheen interceded to make the miracle possible. He
Right.
interceded with God, he interceded with
Right.
Jesus Christ. That's the church teaching. But again, if you imagine the communion of saints and these people are close to God, close to Christ in heaven, of course, they would have a closer connection than we would. So you want their intercession, you need that intercession, and that's the thinking here for those who might be unfamiliar with the process. Now, in a recent interview with the Catholic Post, you said about the miracle, I really don't think it was given to us for us. I think it was given to the church for the church. What do you hope comes of this miracle?
Right. Oh, goodness. I hope that people are drawn closer to God. I hope that more people learn about Fulton Sheen. I hope that more people call on him for prayers.
Mm-hmm.
He has been such a powerful intercessor in our life. And I've heard of lots of people who have already started to call on him, especially for unborn or just born babies. And so I think that would be really beautiful. Just any kind of difficult situation to have Fulton Sheen really step in and help us to intercede. But more than anything, I just hope that this really lifts the church, the American Catholic Church especially, in a time that has maybe been some struggles for us,
Right.
have definitely been some struggles for us, and that it really, it's just a joyful time where God is just glorified. That's what I really hope more than anything.
You know what I love about it? It shows that God intervenes and the supernatural is real, and that he intervenes and cuts through our lives at these moments. And that sense of the miraculous, I think we've lost it, and we lose it every day when we focus on these horrible stories that, frankly, I have to report so often on this show about the scandals and who did what and this bishop did that. It's so great to be able to remind the public as well as ourselves that this is not what the faith is here for. The faith is for this. It's for, in these dark moments, to find hope and to arrest these miracles through faith. That's what this is all about: salvation, redemption, and
Right.
hope.
Right.
So tell me what your son...
And to have an example of a good and holy priest.
Right.
Here is a bishop who loved God, who loved his vocation, who knew that his life was a sacrifice for our Lord. I mean, I think that's really beautiful too.
Tell me what your son, James Fulton, thinks of this miracle that happened to him. Does he have a sense of it? He's 8 years old. He's got to.
In some ways he can wrap his brain around it, and in some ways he can't. I mean, he's 8 years old, and we have a newborn baby in the house, and so he was looking at his brother, and he said, "Okay, so I was like this, but I was dead," and so we're talking through that and trying to figure that out for him. But he's definitely excited. He doesn't really like the attention, so Travis and I try to put ourselves out there for
Right.
him. But it's exciting. It's exciting for our whole family. So
Now, you all went to
we've
see...
been following this for 8 years.
You all went to see
Yes.
Archbishop Fulton Sheen's new tomb in Peoria. What was that like for you, to see this full circle? Because in many ways, it was the miracle that he provided to your son that brought him home.
Right. It was such a relief. I felt such peace and such comfort being with him when we were able to kneel and pray. And, it just felt like I was able to visit a dear friend who I hadn't seen for a very long time. There was just I mean, a lot of joy, but also a lot of peace.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
You say you pray to Fulton Sheen now as much as you ever have. What do you pray for, and what would you encourage others to pray to him for?
Sure, I have asked Fulton Sheen to help me over the years, and to this day, I still ask him to help me to know the Blessed Mother better. Fulton Sheen had a strong devotion to her, and to appreciate our Eucharistic Lord. Of course, Fulton Sheen made a daily holy hour, and so that is something where he has really, just increased my faith and my love and appreciation there. But then also just, I want his prayers for the rest of my life and for the rest of my son's life as I parent James Fulton, and as James goes out into the world. I hope and pray that Fulton Sheen will stick close to my son, will lead him to be a man who loves his Catholic faith, who loves God, is a man of integrity. That's probably my most fervent prayer. The things that Fulton Sheen and I discuss the most are parenting James Fulton.
So beautiful. What a great story. Bonnie, I have to tell you, tears come to my eyes as I think about this, because more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was in New York. I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's too involved, but I made a deal with Fulton Sheen at the behest of a priest because there was a girl I was dating whom was considering conversion to the church but was unsure. And this priest advised, he gave me a set of Archbishop Fulton Sheen's cassette tapes for converts and said, go down to St. Patrick's and make a deal with Fulton Sheen. Now, I didn't really know who he was or where he was buried. I had a vague notion. I knew he was on TV, Uncle Fulty, many years ago, but hadn't watched him, hadn't read any of his works. So I went down to St. Pat's Cathedral, made a deal with him, and my deal was if he helped shape this girl's journey, I would do everything I could to get him back on television. A few years later, I came to EWTN, and we did a documentary on him, which led to Life is Worth Living, airing on EWTN after the world over for almost 10 years. And the girl, by the way, is now my wife of 25 years, and she did come into the church. So there's a lot of interesting tangles here. This is why I also joined the foundation to move the cause 20 years ago, when they were still trying to get New York to take it up, and Bishop Jenky in Peoria did so. So I love your story. To me, it's full circle for me. And now Bishop Jenky would like to have him beatified on the 20th of September, which is my birthday. So we'll see what happens. But all kinds of little Fulton Sheen surprises.
So great.
So we will be in touch, Bonnie. Thank you so much for your story, for your faith, for your courage, and what a great guest. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You can follow the progress of the cause of canonization for Archbishop Fulton Sheen at archbishopsheencause.org.